start your counter, here comes the open.
Yeah.
There you go. You're on.
Hello, I'm John Grom. Welcome to our 110th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our discussion forums twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded discussion. Today's topic, our panel will discuss the contemporary political climate and how and why it differs from the past. Our panel, beginning on my left, is Bryan Laubaugh, President of R&B Financial Services. On his left is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, Senior Research Chemist. On his left is Patty Haskins, retired math teacher and member of the Wadsworth City Council. That's what happens when you have an informal kind of a beginning here.
I'm never to the right of Bryan.
Okay, this is going to be an open panel discussion, and as you can probably tell right now, pretty casual. But we're going to discuss the nature of American politics in 2017. And I'd just like the panel to weigh in on your views of current political environment, how it differs from the past. Particularly, is it the politicians, the voters, the media, or other that have made the big change?
Geez, probably all three.
Okay.
You know?
That settles it.
It seems really bad now. It really does. And I think part of it is just, I don't know, if you're on social media at all, it's very polarized there. And what you hear or what you read and hear about Congress is extremely polarized. And of course, it's been that way in the past. We had a discussion a year or so ago, and we talked about some of the political cartooning in the ages, and man, they were violent.
Yeah.
They really were, and that's social media. So it is bad. It's uncivil. Particularly, social media is uncivil, and I think people don't stop to think about what they're going to say. They just react. I look at a couple of different liberal pages and a couple of different conservative pages, and I switch on and off because they just get unreasonable. Mm-hmm. They just get unreasonable. And we saw it, I noticed it strongly during the Obama administration because I happen to be an Obama fan. And he was being attacked for, I can see very little reason. Mitch McConnell says, my only goal is to make sure he doesn't have a second term, that kind of thing. And while politicians in either party have certainly been doing that for years and years, we certainly hear about it more. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if it's because of, we've talked before about the 24-hour news cycle, people want to bring up things right away. I'm not sure. It seems really bad.
Let me make a suggestion along that line. During the campaign, President Trump did not endear himself to anyone with all of the derisive nicknames that he gave to just about everybody. And I mean horrible nicknames, Lion Ted, Crooked Hillary. I mean, it really caused people to really hate the guy because of that. Not because of his policies, not because of his plans and programs, but because of that kind of name calling. And it really inspired negative emotions in a lot of people. That's my take on that.
Well, that's true. I was more against his policies than it was against his nicknames, but particularly he was mostly nicknaming his Republican opponents.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
Well, you know,
well, it's true, and it's. I think Trump revels in getting an emotional response from people. I think that's what he's run his business on. Bring us to the brink, stimulate people, see
Yeah.
what they're going to do, and see which way they're going to jump, make that an opening for a deal. And I think he's acting the same way as president, which I don't think is a good idea, but particularly in the way of foreign affairs. But.
Yeah. I think that Hillary Clinton came back at him even worse, I think, with her comments. In fact, in a speech, she says he's a racist, a misogynist, a homophobe, Islamophobe, and every other phobe in the book. Yeah. And he's voted for by a basket of deplorables. Now, you can't get much nastier.
That's true. Absolutely true.
What do you think, Bryan?
Well, I think I sort of agree with Ron up to that last part about being in the basket of deplorables. I wasn't a Trump supporter, but it doesn't help anybody to, I guess, attach a name to their group. I don't think that brings people together. You know, and Ron's right, you can go on any sort of social media and see the vitriol that's there. It doesn't help the conversation. You're not going to get anywhere with that. We're seeing it currently with the Democrats in Congress. They're just going to say no because you did that to us, over 8 years. I think we need to get past that.
It's kindergarten.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It reminds me of second and third grade when you started calling somebody a name on the playground, and there wasn't any adult there to stop it.
Yeah.
So I think probably it's probably worse because of the how quickly information is disseminated. The spread of information, even if it's not true. And there was a little thing going around. Denzel Washington was asked by a reporter, and I can't quote exactly what he said, but his comment to the reporter was, you're just trying to get a story out there. You're not worried about if it's true or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's the element that's missing in the media right now on both sides, whether you're a Fox fan or whether you just watch MSNBC. There's no real journalistic credibility that looks into it and says, wait a second, guys, we're not going to do that. I read a little piece by a gentleman that started out at the New York Times over 14 years, worked under the editor-in-chief there at the New York Times that was, straight down the line when it came to objective reporting, and he shared a couple little stories about that, but we've lost that now.
The only place I see it is PBS NewsHour. I listen to that. Now they have a liberal bent, and I think that's obvious. But when they have a topic, they bring people from both sides in there and sit down and get their opinions back and forth, and it stays civil for the most part.
But guess what? Their ratings aren't very high because they're not antagonistic enough.
Right.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's the shame of it, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah.
Because whenever I'm watching public television, the news hour, I'm sitting there thinking, man, I'm going to fall asleep. They're not being nasty to anybody.
Yeah.
What a shame. Patty, I got a question for you. Ron mentioned the fact that dirty politics have been around for a long, long time, but the Brookings Institution just did a poll of college students and found that 51% believe that it's permissible to shout down speakers that you find offensive. 19% believe that violence is permissible to keep them from talking. To me, that's new.
I think it is more prevalent, but I'm not sure that it's new. I think if you go back, we've talked about some of the most antagonistic presidential races were back in the early 1800s, and the difference now is that all of like you said, the media has brought all of this up and the 24-hour news coverage, so we know more about it. I do think, though, that this idea that we shout someone down, that we don't listen to other thoughts, has gotten worse. I really felt for a long time it was getting better. I mean, if you go back to the days maybe when Tip O'Neill was in charge, and there were compromises. They actually discussed both sides. They kind of held their nose and moved on to the next topic. And we're not seeing that anymore. Everyone has to dig their heels in, and I think that's what that report is talking about too. Dig in, and say it's either my way or the highway, type of situation. I do think that a lot of the dysfunction that we're seeing is that we have a president who has a very different style, loves to tweet, he likes to say things that are provocative and make news because it puts him in the headlines, and I very honestly don't think he cares if it is good or bad. As long as his name is out there, he's a happy camper. And we haven't seen that before, where people have, in the past, our presidents have taken time to make comments, have said measured statements instead of doing the flamboyant. And this is Donald Trump's style.
I know. I'm thinking of
obviously.
Teddy Roosevelt. He was pretty flamboyant.
He was pretty flamboyant too, yes. But it is a different style that we're dealing with. You talk about the media and trying to drive the story. I'm not sure if you saw and it wasn't an interview, it was in the Senate, and John McCain was walking out, and he was stopped by a couple reporters, and Peter Doocy asked him a question, basically saying, because of all the animosity between you and Trump, are you going to, from now on, just vote against anything he presents? And McCain looked at him and said, I can't believe you asked such a stupid question, and then called it a dumb question, and then walked on, and which was interesting. And the idea being that he was trying to, exacerbate the entire situation, and to make it sound like there was this big rift between the two of them. And McCain, if anybody, I think, and it's not that I never voted for him, but I do respect the fact that he does speak rationally, and he doesn't always vote the party line. He has some strong beliefs.
He doesn't even vote along the lines of the wishes of his electorate in Arizona. I mean,
Not always. He does what he feels is the best thing to do. But this is a man also that's pushing for, he's a big supporter of the Senate. And, we have to follow the rules. We need to discuss items.
Yeah.
And we need to do it calmly. And that's what we need to see more of.
It's hard to forgive him for Sarah Palin, but
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get over that one.
Yeah, that's
Nothing against women.
totally.
in line with your comments, your question about students, this thing is going down in Florida here with Richard Spencer,
Yes.
the one
Oh,
that
yes,
has-
I just saw
And I just heard that the police have got a massive security presence there. They're calling out the National Guard and the local police.
Rick Scott declared a state of
to
emergency.
because
Yes.
of the student protest.
And what are they protesting exactly? Do you know?
Well,
he's
the
a
fact
white
that Spencer
supremacist.
is speaking, and he was the one that had organized the Charlottesville thing, and so the students are very upset that he's being allowed to speak there.
What are they
considering
afraid that he's going to say?
Who knows?
Anything.
But it goes back.
anything.
It goes back to your point that when you give people like that the attention that they crave, you only create the media event. You know what? It was kind of interesting when they had this. There was some sort of protest, and it might have been a Black Lives Matter or something, but there might have been 20 Black Lives Matter, and what I found interesting was one of them was trying to light a trash can on fire. He couldn't get it lit, but there were at least 15 cameras. There were more media people surrounding him, like waiting for this guy to try to light this.
And it's one guy.
This
Yeah,
one guy
yeah.
trying to light a trash can on fire so that they can report that. Look at what they're doing.
Yeah, I know.
So why? And I throw this in with the Westboro Baptist Church. If you just stop paying attention to them. Let them go on the other side of the road. Let their 15 people scream and yell, and let them have their funeral. They go away.
Are they still active?
I wouldn't
I
know
haven't
because they're
heard
not
anything
getting the
about
media
them.
attention that they want.
Hallelujah.
I
Yeah,
read
exactly.
I read where somebody, some bar owner in Florida is saying, go out and get 2 tickets for this, bring them in, we'll give you a free beer for every 2 tickets, and we'll destroy the tickets. That way they'll have a lot of empty seats in the house.
Yeah, you know. So I mean, and if we continue to play into the media circus,
Yeah.
that's what we're going to get. And John McCain, for all of his, the problems that people have with him, and the guy, I mean, he has the utmost respect from me. I mean, the Senate is supposed to be that deliberative body.
Exactly.
It's supposed to be glacier.
The greatest deliberative body in the world.
It's
is
supposed
the
to be
book-
slow,
Yeah.
and people don't want that because the media wants a circus.
Mm-hmm.
They want to throw something
Yeah.
out there, see you react, and if you don't react, then they don't have a story.
And because compromise is a dirty word,
Right.
you have parties that will go into the back room,
Yeah.
they set up their own thing and hope that they can push it through.
Right.
Without any consideration.
Right.
And then they're shocked when I direct this to both parties, and then they're shocked when no one from the other party will vote with them.
Right. Right.
Well, that's
Yeah.
because their voice was never heard.
Well, another thing too is when Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and some of the Democratic team went to the White House and met with Trump, some people on the left were going apoplectic. I mean, they were like, "What are you talking about? You're going into the lion's den. You can't talk with that rapist. You can't talk with that idiot." And here they're going out there backslapping and Chuck from the my New York days, and we're best of friends and all that kind of stuff. And people just don't get it when it comes to that kind of stuff.
To quote the opening for The Lone Ranger, returning now to the thrilling days of yesteryear. 1964.
I just remember Hi-Yo Silver.
In 1964, there was a tremendous amount of animosity. And I read, someone staged it like this. In 1964, college students demanded the right to speak out on the issues of the day, particularly Vietnam and civil rights. In 2017, college students demand the right to quiet those with whom they disagree, barring journalists who might be critical, etc. That's a huge difference, isn't it?
I think back in the 60s, there were movements, though, to quiet the other side. It wasn't. I mean, I still remember at Akron U, and Akron U was a very conservative campus, in as much as they had mandatory ROTC for all the male students who were freshmen and sophomores. So 2 days a week, you would see every male that was an underclassman dressed in a uniform, which was quite different in the 60s. I remember I was there the one time, and there was a military group that was coming in to speak and so forth. And so it was actually a chapter of the SDS went out and protested against their being allowed to speak. And then the local chapter of the SDS wanted to have a speech and wanted to have a forum to speak. And they were told by the university they could only do that if they had members of the military come in and speak as well at their which is not.
What year was that?
This would have been in '68.
I was there at the time. I don't remember that. What I do remember is May 4th, 1970.
That I remember quite well,
on
yes.
the campus at Akron U. And I remember a bunch of students took over Bookdale Hall, old Bookdale Hall right in the middle of the campus.
Right.
And that
Not for long.
there was a sound truck with a New Jersey license plate that parked next. They set up sound equipment. And I was walking by, and here was this, I'll never forget this young lady up to the microphone saying, "We're not asking for miracles. All we want is workable solutions to the world's problems." That was all.
Yeah.
It's not asking for much.
Not much, no. She
But
wasn't asking.
thinking back, though, to the 50s and 60s, and there were a lot of protests about really specific things. Jim Crow laws. This was a stain on our history.
Absolutely.
Slavery was bad enough, but then the Plessy Ferguson wound up with Jim Crow laws. And these were very, very definite, overt, racist things, barring people from employment in restaurants and hotels. I mean, There were just all sorts of legal things, and there were people protesting against that. Now they're protesting against implied things. When you look at, as we talked about last time, the taking a knee at the national anthem, protesting racial oppression. But there's no real racial oppression that anyone can point to. It's like Jesse Jackson said, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So we've come up with words like systemic and institutional. I don't want to get on a soapbox about this stuff. But the fact is that we're looking at some real cleavages in the country right now based on things that are really hard to define.
Well, I think, when you talk about the NFL, I think that the protesters have been more vocal as to what the issues are. They just had that meeting with Goodell. They are talking about the criminal justice system, the way blacks are treated in communities. I think maybe there's a lot of issues.
There are general statements like that, but very, very few specifics that can be pointed to.
No, I think there's quite a few.
Is that right? Can you tell me what some of them are?
Off the top of my head, no. But I think when they look at some of the deaths, and I know we have a little bit of a disagreement on the way some of those issues went, but even in Ferguson, where it was determined that young man had not done what he was supposed to after he
was attacking a police officer.
Right.
Yeah.
And after the federal government examined the police department, they found that the police department had been acting in a racist manner.
Yeah, but not in that case.
Not in that case, but the reason I think that was brought up is because there had been all of these things.
Yeah.
And so as soon as a black person was killed, it had to be because they were guilty of it and were ignoring it. And I think everything came to a head at that point.
How many unarmed black people do you think were killed by the police last year?
I wouldn't
So we
know.
did take a guess. How many? I mean, based on the kind of stuff that you hear, how many do you think there were?
You would think 10,000, 20,000, but it's very, very small.
But
It's
one is too
negligible.
many.
Well,
Here's my.
I know. And
Here's the
well,
problem.
excuse me. I would tell you, there were 16.
Yeah.
Only 16.
Here's the problem that I have with that particular issue is that black-on-black crime has gone through the roof. When you have just as many people, just as many black children, just as many black unarmed civilians in Chicago are killed than what happened in Las Vegas, and you hate to equate it to that, on a monthly basis, nobody's taking a knee for those people. Nobody's saying, hey, we want this to stop. But if you take a police officer, someone in uniform, and that happens to, it goes through the roof. But nobody wants to look at Baltimore, whose murder rate, black on black murder, has exploded. It has outpaced Chicago. You look at these cities, you look at these cities where black on black crime, I would be much more willing to get behind a group that says we have to stop killing black people, no matter who does it, period.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, oh, wait a second, if it's an officer, and if he's anything, if he's an officer of the law, black, white, Filipino, whatever, that's oppression. But the gang in Chicago or the gang in Baltimore or Philadelphia can take out 20 people, and nobody blinks an eye at it because, it happens.
And I agree with you, but I hear this all the time about, and they talk about Chicago and the black on black crime. So what is our solution to that? What are we doing about it? And the solutions are not there. No one is doing.
There are solutions, however, they're unconstitutional. And it was attempted a few years back. The Chicago police, God bless them, they recognized there are an awful lot of people living in Cabrini Green and other allotments in the south side of Chicago. There were thousands of guns. They thought if we just get the guns away from them, you ought to like that. Take the guns away from them. Oh, yeah. And so they wanted to organize sweeps, of Cabrini Green for one, a big public housing thing. And it was, the ACLU sued them, and it was unconstitutional. You couldn't go, a warrantless search was unconstitutional, which it was. However, I don't know if you can have some kind of a wartime exception to Constitution or not, but if you took away all the guns of all the young black guys in the south side of Chicago, you'd save an awful lot of lives.
Well, maybe do what New York did.
In fact, 7,881 last year.
New York
FBI.
instituted a process whereby they lowered crime in some hot areas. You know, the Times Square was a big area. They went in, and all of a sudden now they're profiling.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. It's that broken glass. I can't remember exactly what they were talking, but it's the broken glass theory. Is that if you see a broken window, you fix it right away. And you determine how that happened instead of waiting for the burglary to happen.
Yeah.
And that, you know, more preventative stuff. So I think there are some solutions out there, but a lot of times people just don't want to hear them.
Sometimes the idea of a free society is pretty vexing. There's a lot of things that we can't solve.
Yeah, you got to have an efficient dictatorship.
A benevolent.
This is something. This discussion is probably turning more into racism than I wanted it to.
Made the trains run on time.
But that is one of the big issues, I think. But I just wanted to read this, Ron. I thought you'd like this. Jennifer Shaw is the deputy director of the ACLU in Washington. And she wrote this on July 16th in 2010. Most Americans are not racist. Most of us don't look for ways to discriminate against people who look different from us. And very few of us try to harm others because of the color of their skin. But that doesn't mean that most Americans live their lives free of racial biases. Jerry Large discusses in his recent article in Washington, implicit bias, the unconscious way that we think about people of different races and genders or religious groups is a big problem in America today, as overt racism was a few years ago. Implicit bias affects the decisions that we make every day, who we hire, who we arrest, whose testimony believe. And I believe that this is very, very accurate.
Oh, I do too. The term now is white privilege.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing here. And the glass ceiling against women. It's the same kind of thing. It's true.
Yeah, we can have a whole discussion about those two terms. But the idea of having implicit bias, and I don't know how in the world you avoid it. I really don't. I've got some implicit biases floating around this table.
What?
It's very, every time I hear Democrat politicians talk about tax breaks for the wealthy without ever saying who wealthy is. You know, but that's another matter. Thank you very much for the conversation, even though we got off to a very informal start.